the environment, particularly on the Andy Griffith Show, was really wonderful and very inclusive. And if there's any reason that I like reaching out and talking to people about what I do, it's because that was very much the environment on the Andy Griffith Show. The actors were really allowed to participate, to contribute. And even as a kid, I'm talking about 6, 7, 8 years old, I was allowed to raise my hand and offer up a point of view about a scene, or changing a line of dialogue, or making something a little bit more natural. I was allowed to participate. And, you know, imagine the sort of the self-esteem that goes along with being accepted by a bunch of adults. It was extraordinary. I became intrigued by what the director did, primarily because when I was working on the show, on the Andy Griffith Show, the actors were a blast. I had so much fun hanging around with them. They were interesting, they were smart, they were funny, they were playing practical jokes. Then on a dime, they could focus and do great work. And it was, you know, even as a kid, I was impressed with these people. But I also really enjoyed spending time with the crew. You know, they'd let me sit up there and work the camera, or learn a little something about sound, and how the microphone worked, and placement, and lighting, and things like that. And I enjoyed that time. And after a while, I realized that the director was the one person who, moment to moment, day in and day out, really got to play with everybody. And the job just started to look very, very good to me. The thing that I've also, I think, understood is because my father is sort of a freelance actor, a character actor. He's never become a star. He's never had leverage, never had power in the industry, but he's always worked and he's made his living. But it's always a struggle. It's always a struggle. I was always extremely fortunate, but I could see my father struggling in what I view as in a kind of a noble way, because he's not really getting, you know, all the kudos and the perks and all the stuff that a lot of people are attracted to the business for. He just liked being a part of it. He liked being a part of it. And that's what I began to understand, is that I was a part of something. And I started to think about what that thing was. What is that process of staging a television show or a movie and communicating with the audience? And it began to be much more to me than just showing up and fulfilling a function because somebody handed me a script. It became an exploration. It became a chance to really to keep challenging myself and keep kind of trying to sort of honor this process, this system. The kids tended to, I wouldn't say ostracize me, but to make me uneasy, because there'd always be 2 or 3 weeks where every day at school was more like some kind of a personal appearance, where I was at everybody's disposal. And, you know, and if one group wanted to get autographs, they'd bug me for autographs. If another group wanted to, you know, make fun of me, they'd make fun of me. And I wasn't a person. I was this sort of kid, this image from TV that, you know, that they now had at their disposal. It was kind of strange. I've had, I think, an extraordinarily kind of blessed journey. At the same time, if I can give myself credit for anything, it's probably for not taking it all for granted. I don't think I've ever assumed it was going to go on forever unless I kept earning my way, earning my keep, and maybe even to like a neurotic extent. You know, I never want to coast on past performances, and it's probably one of the reasons why I wanted to become a director. So I wanted to be able to control those opportunities so I could keep doing good work. My father is working more now than he ever has, and he said, you know, a lot of my friends, you know, they went into the corporate world, they became doctors, they had great careers, the kinds of careers that everyone would have sort of applauded them for pursuing, and they pursued them, and some of them are happy about it and some of them aren't. But I followed my dream, and if the object is to have a secure and gratifying life, I've achieved that. Maybe never stardom, but my home is paid for. I have a great pension through the Screen Actors Guild plan, and I have security. And on top of everything else, while everyone else is winding down, I still can keep the dream alive, because you never know when another interesting challenge is going to come along or another great role. And I'm working more now than I ever have, and I'm active. I've got a lot to look ahead toward. As a young person, a young adult, trying to make the transition from sitcom actor to motion picture director, well, I mean, I was getting an awful lot of sort of, patronizing kind of pats on the head and, hey, hang in there, and, in another 10 or 15 years, I'm sure somebody will give you a chance to direct. And that's not what I wanted to hear at all. So I had a lot of frustration about that, and I kind of earned my way out by making student films myself, by writing, and by being fortunate enough to get myself into a position of some leverage. By being one of the lead actors on Happy Days, I had some leverage. It's had something I could sort of trade with. Most people get their first chance to direct by blackmailing their way in. Generally, they have to say, well, if you want me to write the script, you got to let me direct it. If you want me to act in the movie, you got to let me direct it. If you want this money, this group of investors that I found, you're going to have to let me direct the film. And that's, nobody really wants to hand a first-time director the reins. Creative undertakings, putting on shows, working in groups on projects, school projects, research projects, making films or videotapes. I always think that they're, in a way, a kind of better model for how to get things done in life than, for example, playing sports. And I used to play and coach kids, and I love sports. I love athletic endeavors. But the fact is that that's a kind of a split second. Always boils down to split second reaction time and dedication, preparation, and then execution, split second execution. And most human endeavors don't depend on that. They depend on a more methodical, careful consideration of all the possibilities, and then the dedication and the execution. And I always think that creative projects are actually a better training ground for getting things done in the real world, in real life. When you're doing something as emotionally risky as sort of working on a TV show or a movie, I mean, part of it is that you're facing the real possibility of complete public humiliation. I mean, it's not all that unusual for people to just say, "Oh, that was terrible. Did you see that guy? He was awful. He stinks." And so everybody knows that that's out there because they've participated in that same kind of ragging on shows and movies. They know that you're putting yourself up for that sort of that sort of judgment. You're opening yourself. So as a result, there does need to be a kind of trust. But I've found that in the creative community, there's often a sort of an instant trust, and you can either in just one or two conversations, you can actually determine whether that trust exists in a relationship or not. My first movie was a car chase comedy, young people on the run, called Grand Theft Auto, and made for $602,000, but the film made a terrific profit, and it got me started. I wrote it with my father, and I had to star in it in order to get to direct it. But that's the last time that I acted in anything that I directed. Well, I actually had to do a scene in the next film that I directed, but I didn't like it, and I cut the scene out. And the executives in charge of the project, fortunately, liked the movie well enough that they accepted the fact that I cut myself out of the movie. That was the last time that I acted in anything that I directed.